find Todd's email, and I'll just read that as a update. And Celia and Joanne, I'll forward this to you so you have this update for the summary. Okay, just for the record, we have Kevin Moore from NCDOT Project Management Unit, Brendan Merethu from Division 13, Kofi Caldwell from the Burton Street Neighborhood Association, and Michael Dawson from FHWA, Ken Putnam from City of Asheville, Pete Wall, also from City of Asheville and Parks and Recreation, Joanna Rocco, and Celia Myers from AECom. Thank y'all for joining the meeting this evening. I have an email report from Todd Okolacini. Just one point of discussion for this evening in regards to the neighborhood walk. Todd had met with their communication department at the city and agreed it would be best for us to provide an update on where we are with implementing the neighborhood plan at the upcoming neighborhood association meeting. And saying this would be able to resolve some potential questions we may get before the neighborhood walk and still be scheduled. It would give us an opportunity to advertise the walk in person with neighborhood residents. So he's saying perhaps they can go to the next neighborhood meeting, looping in Dwayne to get his thoughts on this as well. Dwayne, well, it looks like Dwayne was already copied, and Joanna, you were copied. And let's see. I can try to forward it to our whole group, or Joanna, since you've got a copy of it, maybe you can forward it to the whole group.
Okay, I can do that.
He also said that one of their team members also agreed to knock on doors to promote the neighborhood walk. He's found that there's a need for some additional engagement and promotion to advertise these types of events, or we risk having lots of city staff attend and not a lot of residents. There were not many comments on the neighborhood walk interactive map that Simone shared a few weeks back. Other than that, he says that they're still going through the draft architectural review survey, as well as the citywide African American Heritage Resources Survey. And we hope to share both of those documents in the coming weeks. All right, if we had anybody else join us. Not yet. So Pete, maybe while we have you, we can talk a little bit about your review of the conceptual exhibit that we sent you.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's pretty straightforward. I mean, I think what we were saying is just show conceptually access from the proposed pedestrian path that you can see on the screen there down to towards the proposed Smith Mill Creek Greenway. And then what you guys did more than we had asked, really. And then I think to David's comments was just one of the things from the neighborhood association that they had requested in the plan was to show some gathering space there. And so as David's comments and my comments said, just, I think it can just be as simple as a bubbled out area where that might actually occur. And it looks like based on the topography in there, yeah, he had sort of drawn a circle there where the trail comes off of the proposed pedestrian path. And then one a little further to the north. My suggestion was to just draw a bubble diagram in there that straddles that existing property corner there. Um, and then I think that fulfills sort of what we were intending to show with the land acquisition of what the potential development potential is for this area. So
Okay. Yeah. That'd be good to look at as far as if we have like a 5% slope coming down from the end of Buffalo Street.
mhm.
Once we get close to where that bend is, where Saratoga's paper right away comes in, there's the label is there, it says proposed pedestrian path.
Yeah.
The contours tend to bubble out a little bit there to the left, the
Mhm.
west side, and that's why I was, wanting to look at those slope stick lines from the other one to see if that kind of corresponded with where we may have a little, yeah, excess topography where a bubble could be made,
Okay.
because it is dropping off pretty steeply
Yeah.
there, and the bubble may need some retaining wall around it, perhaps to contain the area, maybe with
Mhm.
a rail along the top of that retaining wall.
Yeah, I think to your point in your email, you indicated that there's going to need to be some grading and tree clearing and removal, and in this is obviously highly conceptual at this point, um, to just basically show the community that that's generally the area that we're thinking of that could accommodate some level space there, um, which would be part of the right of way or what's, like you said, the paper right of way and then the proposed land acquisition piece. But definitely, as the next level would require a lot more refinement and study to determine just how big that space is and how much grading would be required and all of the detailed design that would have to go into it. But I think to me this shows, and I'll leave it up to the neighborhood to see if it you know illustrates to them. But from a development standpoint, certainly less steep than the properties there to the right on that property or the map.
Yeah, I guess we're talking about to the right or to the east between Fayetteville Street and Buffalo Street.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that is fairly steep as well. Um, Maybe not quite as steep as that to the west, where option one is, but uh, yeah,
Well, and I think the other consideration with this is that it actually um, gives the opportunity to connect up to the future Smith Mill Creek Greenway, and so that's the other um, add advantage to the property on the west side. So.
mhm, okay. Um, but I guess my understanding of what you were proposing was to have that gathering space up next to the path rather than down low next to the creek.
That's right. Yep.
Hmm. And then if a accessible path was later determined feasible by the city, then when the city develops a greenway, then they could make it come up to Buffalo Street or to the path
That's
in
right.
some manner.
Yep. That's correct.
Okay, Michael Dawson, do you have any questions of Pete or of NCDOT?
No, just a reminder that, I mean, there's only a finite amount of money to spend, and we have to decide where that gets spent at. So
Yeah,
um, it's kind of an open book at this point.
right. Right now, we've been um, gathering cost estimates for various items that are transportation related or NCDOT related, and as outlined in the neighborhood plan, some items were NCDOT responsibility, some were city responsibility, and what we'll be doing is taking these estimates and putting them together to right size the amount of money spent on the mitigation for items in the Burton Street neighborhood plan.
Mhm.
Um, so we'll we'll keep moving on that. So Brendan, um, that's something that we need to do pretty soon. Is to get the division together with FHWA and project management unit and uh, take a comprehensive look at the estimates we have so far and show what we approved to move forward.
Okay, that sounds good, Kevin.
Okay. I think this concept, it kind of helps to see, just how much grade difference there is and how much switchbacks are needed uh, to make that grade difference and make it ADA accessible. Um, so it's almost as if both of those two lots are needed in order to get down to the bottom. So total
Yeah,
of,
agreed. Thank you all for putting this together.
right, let's see. See if there's any other updates. Um, see. Ken, do you have anything to update from the city's perspective?
No, Kevin, I do not.
I think rest of the action items are kind of hinging on the walkthrough. Um,
Yes, I believe you're correct on that.
all right.
And I guess I'll just throw out this question. I think on some of the items, I assume we're still going by the official list of mitigation improvements that we've already been identified, but I I also I'm I'm assuming that with the letter that we recently received, there's at least some talk about adding to that list, or is that decision going to be made later? And I can give you one example, Kevin, what I'm talking about. You know, one of the strategies outlined was a sidewalk on Downing Street, but it doesn't appear like we've got 50% of support from the neighborhood. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we would put a sidewalk somewhere else, does it? Or does it?
No, it doesn't. That was that specific street was outlined in the plan, so that's where it would be applied if it met the criteria specified in the plan, uh, uh, per which was per the agreement of the property owners. Um, the ADA sidewalk improvements are still a part of the mitigation plan. So those
Right.
locations where curb ramps were identified, crosswalks, and other measures related to the ADA improvements, those are still on the table.
Right, right. Yeah, I understood that. I just want to make sure. The nice thing about Downing Street, even though that probably wasn't considered when this was established, it does agree with our current policy of trying to build sidewalks on our needed linkages, and Downing Street is a needed linkage. So that was a good thing.
Right.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you, Kevin.
Okay. The other thing that uh, Dwayne had asked about, and I'll just bring it up for those that are on, and for your sake, Kofi, was discussing um, the noise wall and where it was located, and I include replied to Dwayne with that location and a little bit of an explanation of what's going on there. I'll show it to everybody that's on the call right now. Okay, what we're looking at is the traffic noise report, which was conducted based on the preliminary design. And what we're looking at the bottom of the screen is Haywood Road. And here's the intersection of Haywood Road and Burton Street. What's in red is proposed right-of-way. And this shows the gas station on the corner of Haywood and Burton. That's between the existing ramp and Burton Street. This is showing the proposed ramp going through the middle of that gas station. And then going north of that is part of the storage facility. It's also shown in red. And then the orange dashed line is the location of the preliminary noise wall that was studied. It goes behind these two properties next to Noble Street, and then behind the property just north of Noble Street. These others that kind of wrap around behind the white circles with the X's show properties that would be purchased as part of the project. That's due to the ramp coming through. That noise wall, which is called NWB-1, then goes through the storage facility and then along Burton Street. And that's where it's closest and most visible to the neighborhood itself. Go to the next portion. As you keep going north, it continues to go along Burton Street, and here, this where it says A941/B12, that is the Community Baptist Church property. And here there was a little bit of a conflict in how things were labeled and in the study. See the orange line going through that property and the property to the south of the church. But you see the red area, which is the proposed right-of-way going behind those properties between the ramp and the properties. And so the intent was that the noise wall would actually run along this red line behind the properties and then transition over to Burton Street. And so that these two properties would not be purchased as part of the project in total. So what does that mean? It just means that the wall should actually be shown real behind there and then transitioning over. These two properties then would become receptors or sound receptors, and them being in the vicinity of the walls, more likely that they would increase the likelihood of the wall being reasonable and feasible even more. So from a preliminary standpoint, the wall would still be reasonable and feasible with the wall there. When the final design is complete, that will be analyzed in another noise study, and that's called the design noise report. And of course, this will be the wall will be reevaluated based on the final design and those conditions. But that noise wall did continue going north and past Fayetteville Street, and then past just a little bit north of Edgar Street. Any questions about the noise wall location?
You got this in a hard copy that you can send, or is that what you sent earlier today?
Hey, Dwayne, what I sent earlier today was a link to this PDF,
Okay.
and it certainly can be printed out. Let's see what size. Okay, yeah, it fits on a letter size paper, but the sheets that the pages that show this noise wall, I believe, are 73, 74, and maybe 75, but yeah, there's just shows that little north end again there on 75. Um, so I'm not sure when you were able to join us, Dwayne, but did you hear the explanation down here around the Community Baptist Church area?
No, I just got on this.
Okay, I can go back and cover that again. This is Haywood Road at Burton Street, and this property is the gas station that's between the existing ramp and Burton Street. Just north of that is the storage facility. And the orange line is the beginning of the noise wall behind this property right here. We're just south of Noble Street. If you were to turn on Noble Street, go toward the existing ramp and then turn left, I think there's about 3 properties there where the proposed ramp is coming through in that vicinity. The noise wall would be behind the remnants of the property that are along Burton Street, up through Burrow Street. And then the noise wall was analyzed as going along Burton Street from there, basically where the middle of where the storage facility is there. Can't remember what the name of this street is here. Is this still Baker where it intersects?
Yeah, that looks like Baker.
Okay, and see if I went the wrong way. Or did I? Okay, here we go. Sorry for making you dizzy. Those walls continuing along Burton Street until this property that's labeled A941 B12 is the Community Baptist Church property, and the home just to the south of that. There's a little mix-up here in that the red-shaped area is what was the proposed right-of-way, and it was drawn going behind the Community Baptist Church and this property to the south of that in order to avoid purchasing those, to try to keep those. And so the wall should have been analyzed going behind those and then over to Burton Street. But even without these two being shown as noise receptors, the wall itself was found reasonable and feasible based on the preliminary design. And so if the wall was placed back behind it, it'd be very likely that it would still be reasonable and feasible. That would be two additional receptors that would be benefited by the wall. So it's likely that that wall would still be reasonable and feasible based on the preliminary design. Another noise study called the Design Noise Report will be done based on the final design. And so once the final design is done, it will be analyzed for noise and the reasonable and feasible characteristics of the wall, and it's where it should be located.
So is it going through the church or not going through the church? Because I see the orange like brick that you said was the wall. So I'm not understanding that part.
Yeah, it is not going to go through the church.
Okay.
This discrepancy was not, the report wasn't redone, because basically what the report is going to do is just tell us if the wall is preliminarily reasonable and feasible. Going back and redrawing it back here and reanalyzing it, it would still be reasonable and feasible. And regardless, when the final design is done, another noise report has to be conducted, and it's the finding of that noise report that will kind of show where that final location of the wall is. And it's at that point, if it is found reasonable and feasible based on that final noise report, then it'll go into a balloting process for all the benefited receptors. They'll vote on whether they want the wall or not, and a simple majority of 50% or more have to vote in favor of the wall in order for it to go in. If the wall doesn't get at least 50%, then it doesn't go in.
And who is that making this vote? Who's doing that?
It's the benefited receptors. So people who benefit from the wall, I think this blue dot shows, I'll go to the legend so you can see. So blue dot is impacted by noise and benefited by the wall. Green dot is benefited by the wall, although based on the model, the increase in noise was not to a level where they were identified as impacted. So it's the people who are benefited, from my understanding, are the ones who get to vote. And it may be those that are impacted, even though they've not benefited. That balloting process is in the NCDOT noise policy. So I can send you a link to that as well.
Yes, yes. Okay, how would these people be contacted? Is going to be through DOT, a phone call? How would they even?
Yes, NCDOT, there's a noise and air group, and they're the ones who would be contacting the the those that would be balloted, and they have a process. I've not been a part of that process, but I'm sure they do it by mail, and um, they probably would also probably engage the Burton Street Neighborhood Association. Um, and I think they've even gone door to door before, and put door hangers on those residences and businesses. So they have a variety of means of getting the word out. Certainly, we'll be getting that group in touch with the Burton Neighborhood Association, Burton Street Neighborhood Association. But what I wanted to just to make sure, just to respond as to what that preliminary location was. Basically, where you see the red shaded area is the proposed right of way, and then that wall would be within that right of way. Then you can see that the wall then is pretty far offset north of there from Burton Street toward the edge of the highway. So it's much further away and not as visible from the Burton Street itself. Then here, this is Texas Street. You see it's a little more than a block away from Burton Street. But
So
depending,
I missed this part. Those houses that's next to the church. So the sound wall goes back behind those homes too, or how does it go? It's like once you
by
pass the
the
church,
Community Baptist
yeah,
Church.
yeah. There's several houses that was built in those blank areas right there. So the sound wall goes behind those homes.
Yes, more than likely it will uh, go somewhere behind these homes and then over like that. So, like you said, some of these other homes were built since this study was done.
Yeah.
So those new homes would be treated as new receptors. So any new homes would be additional sound receptors and be included in that final design noise report. And so, if there any of these other properties had um, residences that were added, they too would be included. Given that, in the preliminary design, it was found reasonable and feasible, most likely it would also be found reasonable and feasible in the final design. And then it would proceed to the balloting process. And part of sharing that was to think of, where from a standpoint of the art on the wall, where would the best location be? Um, here, say south of this property is, or wherever this wall comes back in, across from Baker Avenue, is going to be the most visible through that area. And then on down to close to the middle of the storage facility. And then it would transition behind some of the other properties
So, you said behind the other properties that so they plan on staying there after you coming up. I mean, how is that? And those are the properties we were saying. What kind of little parking or little smaller green spaces can be created, or do those businesses or whatever? I don't even know what that is. Do they plan on staying there? I mean, if you take half their property, that mean that whole property is dead, right?
That is something for the appraisers to investigate as to what's left over, if that is uneconomic. They call that an uneconomic remnant. And in that case, an offer is made to the property owner for that remnant. And the property owner gets an opportunity to either accept or negotiate on that offer or decline it and say no, they want to keep that remnant. Maybe it is economic to them and they want to keep it. But that's called the uneconomic remnant process. What I'm going to do is just try to go to Google Maps and identify what these properties are. One is this house here shown as number 15, Burton Street. I'll just drop the man down there so we can see what that is. So it's this house right here.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with the owner of this home?
No, I don't know them. No, I don't
Okay.
know. But that's where the wall is going to go, through the back of that yard, or through the house.
Right behind that house.
Oh,
It's
behind
hard to
the house.
see, but the building is about right here.
Right. Okay, I see what you're saying.
And then the building next to it is back here. So that
Right.
building would be purchased, and then
Yeah.
what's left is a remnant.
Right.
And so what the appraiser would do is say, okay, there's this remnant. Is it economical? Is it such of a size that something could be built on there? Is it not? But they may come up with or maybe even the owner says, well, I can't do anything with this left over. What, why don't you buy my whole property? And then they could, have that discussion as to, okay, yeah, you're right. That's not, let's give you fair market value for the whole thing. But that's a part of that right away process.
And of course, they'd be getting relocation benefits as well, uh, and be moved to another comparable house that was their selection.
That's correct. It's not just paying them for their property, but also providing relocation assistance. And that's to make sure that they're whole as they move and don't find themselves in a hole, but be whole. Then just here, just north of Noble Street, there's another residence right there. That's this house.
Right.
So the idea would be to come behind that house. The others that are down here, the ramp is coming through this area right here. So each of those would be relocated. Of course, the appraisal would be for the highest and best use of the land, and then additional relocation assistance would be provided for those owners or residences to help them find other housing.
So in the planning for this, if those those residents decide to sell it all, will you then have to go back into a planning process of what that area would look like, or would it, or you know what I mean? You
Yeah,
know what I'm trying to say?
where these three houses are,
No, I was
or
talking about the ones where the sound wall gonna come up to their back door. Um, if if they decide to sell the whole property, do you have to go back into a whole design phase to figuring out what you would use with that land if 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 you purchase it at all? Or would you have to wait to see if they want to sell the remnants before you start that design process for that piece of land?
we would not have to go back into another uh, planning process. So the property would be split. So where the right of way is, the right of way, the part that's in right of way would just become part of the right of way. What's outside would just be a parcel. So that parcel would stay intact as a parcel. It would just be the owner name would just be the state of North Carolina. Um, that is then, I guess, could also be deemed as property that could be sold even, I guess. Michael Dawson,
Yeah,
do you?
sure. That would be until the project was completed, that would be considered what we call a residual property. Once the project is completed, it would become a residual or residue property. Once the project is completed, that would just become surplus right of way, and it could be sold at fair market value, or it could be given to the city to use for parkland at no cost, or for another public transportation use given to a public entity at no cost, or sold to a private property owner, somebody like adjacent to it wanted to buy it and had access to it.
Right, right. So that's what I was thinking about. A park or parking or park for,
Park.
yeah, a park, little small place, or for parking, especially for parking.
Like a
Uh,
on-street
yeah,
parking. And so,
yeah, yeah.
um, Ken Putnam, that's something that Dwayne's has you mentioned before, is if any of this space along here in the proposed right of way, or if there were other properties that became residual right of way, whether through economic remnants or so on, but would the city want to pursue adding on-street parking and um, adding that to the maintenance budget for the city, since Burton Street is a city street?
Yeah, that's a good question. And before I answer that, just to give everyone one example of what this type of property has been used for in the past, the skateboard park that the city built a number of years ago is on uh, North Carolina state-owned property that's just exactly like you're describing right here, through an agreement between the two parties. So that's one example there. Now, as far as on-street parking, uh, we can add or take away on-street parking with no impact on any kind of property. On-street parking is within the street footprint. And we have other cases, though, where we have agreements with the DOT, especially under bridges, where we're using through an agreement, we're using the land for parking purposes. But I wasn't, so I assume, and this question will be back to Mike Dawson, that would be a viable use, a possible use in the future. Would it not?
That would be up for the Access Control and Disposal Committee to decide.
Okay. Yes,
Yeah,
that's fair enough.
Yeah, we'd have to wait for them to take a look at it.
Sure, sure. But I do know that we have some of those agreements in place, but it all boils down to the fact that to establish parking on anything like that would require it to be identified as a project and then go through our process for any projects that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the smaller it is, it's going to be the more difficult to develop because we'd have to do it to our standards, just like we'd require a private developer. So there'd be landscaping requirements and everything.
Right. And there's other things that are in the vicinity as well, like utilities, and you know, if it was going to be like an on-street parking, those utilities might have to be relocated, and some costs that might be additional costs. Um, but it sounds like that is something that we'd have to determine after the project is complete to see what remnants of property there might be, um, before we could, and then the city would have to make their evaluation as well. Let's see. Um, let's see. Yeah, there's the storage facility that noise wall is kind of coming back off of the road a little way through here. So whether any of this is an economic remnant, I guess that would remain to be seen once the appraisers get further into um, their studies. It's like a couple of properties here that are shown with the wall going um, between Burton Street and their residence. It's a little confusing because you have to go down to the next sheet to then continue on. But yeah, what you see in red is proposed right of way. The wall itself on those two properties, the Burton Street Community, uh, Community Baptist Church, and then the property south of that. The intent is to go around and spare those properties. Any more questions about that at this point? Okay. Um, Dwayne, we did have a little conversation at the beginning about this concept here at the park area. And Pete Wall from Parks and Recreation and Dave Nutter, well, I guess this particular drawing where these two circles are, were Dave Nutter's recommendation as to perhaps where a parklet or a flat area might be provided uh, for gathering space. This elbow here of the path does kind of encircle this area where there is somewhat of an outcropping of the contours. So we can look into whether that kind of space could be provided at that location. and that would provide easier access than having to wind all the way down to a gathering space further down next to the creek. Might be
Yeah, where are
also
those circles? I'm trying to figure out where you are right now with those two circles.
okay. This is Saratoga Street right here. I'll go to the map. Okay, you see where Saratoga Street is and Fayetteville Street, where that corner is? Buffalo Street is over here. So the path would extend from the end of Buffalo Street towards Patton. Then there's some existing right-of-way that comes kind of extending from Saratoga over to the existing right-of-way that extends from Buffalo Street. So that circle is about right here.
Interesting.
So I'll go back to that drawing. So this is a Saratoga here and Fayetteville Street here. Buffalo Street extending here. And this one circle there.
Interesting.
So some property would still need to be purchased in order to provide that there. Of course, with the path going through, we're changing the access type of this property. It had kind of a street right away access, even though it was very, very, very steep. Probably someone would never ever put a driveway down into it, but it does change the access type. So that 0.59 acres would probably need to be purchased. Then on this property, we'd have to see if they still would have the same type of driveway access that they had from, or driveway accessibility. That they do today, even though the street ends here, they still have access off of that right away. What Pete was explaining is that providing an area up here would be easier to access and maintain, both as far as providing a gathering space.
Right. And did y'all ever look at the property across from Burton Street where the Blue Note store used to be? That vacant lot up there? Did y'all
Not
ever
familiar with,
consider that spot?
let's see, I'll go here to the map. And so where was that? The Blue Note store?
Yeah, the Pearson store that was diagonally across from Burton Street. That's where we originally wanted to put the business incubator. And right now it's like an empty lot. We didn't want to consider it till we figured out how far this highway was going to come into, up there.
Is that Burton Street near Haywood, or Burton Street and
Burton
another
Street
one?
across from the community center, from the Burton
Okay.
Street community.
Okay, so there's the community center. Burton Street. Is
You
it
see going down Buffalo, right there, that little green area right there. You go up there.
okay?
Go across, right? You just passed it. Go back, right there, right there.
Okay. So this is the location of the original Pearson store?
Yes. Now, right to the right of that is a house right there right now. But to the left of it it goes all the way over there. So yeah, and it goes back all the way to the highway.
Okay, so let me try something here.
I mean, when you talk about flat spaces and you talk about, I mean, I just want to know, did y'all even consider, did y'all look at that spot as a
Yeah,
possibility?
we did not, because the way the the strategy was written was that it was down near the creek. So uh, from what we heard from the Burton Street neighborhood leadership is that the neighborhood used to gather near the creek, and so that's kind of how the creek was kind of the focus, or something near there was our focus.
Yeah, well, it's like if, I mean, right now it's an overgrown, I mean, it's like if an investment is not going to be made for the greenway, why would you put something down there when you're not going to, right now it appears that the true investment in the space to make it accessible and open to the community has not been, secured. It hasn't been secured. So I would think that if that's the case, and we want to see some, like, the pocket park should be, where people can access it. Seems like it's a large investment needs to be made in that whole space to put something down there like that, And this place is closer, it's more level grounds, more space, I would think, and it'd probably be easier to maintain than back then, because then you got to clear, you know, I don't know. I just want to make sure that y'all look at other options and consider it. Now, if y'all was making a greenway investment, I would say, nah, do it down there. But if if a future greenway investment is made, then you can build the infrastructure needed to make it a cool place to go hang out. But it appears that that's not a priority. So I was trying to figure out what's a more logical space in the community that it would be easier for people to get to.
Okay. Um, take another look at it from this standpoint. There's the community center. There's the Buffalo and Burton Street intersection, and then that's the property right there. Does appear to be a little bit of right of way needed from portion of it, but potentially, yeah, the noise wall continuing across there. So what I hear from your standpoint is, from Burton Street neighborhood leadership, is that this would be an acceptable or even preferable location um, than the other location, considering accessibility and the topography and things like that.
Right, but if y'all plan on putting a greenway down there, Joe, that'll be a great spot to put it.
Mm-hmm.
But we got some more debate and some more money to raise to do that, right?
Well, that's something definitely. Pete and Ken from from your standpoint, just to ask for you guys to think about the viability, if you were to call that option 3, what, you don't have to answer it right now. It's just, is that a viable option from Parks and Recreation standpoint? Okay. Pete, it sounds like you've unmuted. Did you want to comment now, or go back and discuss it with others?
Oh, I think that was Ken that was unmuted, but
Okay.
him and I can get together and discuss that, and then get back with the group.
Okay.
Yeah, Kevin, this is Ken Putnam. I'll be glad to meet with Pete on that, but I guess I'm a little confused because I was thinking that the whole purpose was try to add, we'll say, an amenity to the pedestrian path that will be going along that Buffalo Street right of way to provide a connection to the multi-use path that'll be down there on Patton Avenue. And so this other idea of we'll call it a pocket park, to me looks just more like an extension of the existing community center just across the street.
Yeah.
And I would not, I would hope that the pedestrian path would still be on the table if this park idea went away.
Yeah. And
I forgot about that whole thing going across the bridge. I mean, I was just seeing that. Is the pocket park near that crossover going across Smith Mill Creek? I mean, I don't. I forgot all about that whole piece down there.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's something that I think will be part of our discussion with between Division 13, Federal Highway Administration, and other NCDOT. It could be, in order to put this pedestrian path in, this property has to be purchased anyway, because we've changed its access from a street access to now it's a path access. Just like this yellow outlined parcel here, that one has to be purchased anyway because we're changing its access type from a street access to it's now off of a path. So it may be that this parcel has to be purchased anyway. So, and then being in line with the original plan, which says a park area near the creek, could be that this is really the in keeping with the plan. Although the idea you have of that spot eventually perhaps being an extension of the community center and with its historical significance, that's not a bad idea either.
I mean, we can do it all then. We should do it all.
Okay. And there was Dwayne, we talked about we got an email from Todd Oklachaney. He's been out of town and he actually lost his voice, so he wasn't able to call in. But he did give an update, and Joanna's gonna forward his update to the group. I think you were copied on his original email, so you've got that. I don't think we had any other updates really at this time. But Joanna and Celia, if you could please set up a meeting between Division 13 and FHWA and PMU that'd be great. We'll need to go over the things we have.
What's the guy in the Division 13? Is he on the call?
Brendan Merithu from Division 13 is on. Steve Cannon is also another division.
Yeah, Steve Cannon. Is he on the call?
No, he's not on the call this evening.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up with him or the other guy that's on the call about contracting with the DOT, and we want to come over there. I think Steve. I guess I gotta wait for Steve. Steve said we can come over there and have a meeting. I want to talk to him about having that meeting. I emailed him, but I want to follow up with him about that. And that's the whole contracting thing. Did y'all talk about that? Did y'all have an update around that?
Yeah. I haven't talked with him, but I did, hear from Brendan. He had to drop off about 15 minutes ago. He said there were no updates to the business certification outreach. So probably best thing to do would be to contact Steve directly.
All right, thanks.
Okay. Let's see. While we're just thinking about it, the next meeting is the first Monday in September, happens to be Memorial Day or Labor Day. And so we need to see if we need to, I know from my perspective, I won't be able to meet that evening. That's September the 5th. And see if we need to move to the 12th, September 12th. So
That'd be better for me, Ken Putnam.
okay. So Dwayne and Kofi, if you need some time to look at your calendars, you don't have to answer right now, but that's something we need to discuss when to reschedule that.
Yeah, that's good for me.
September 12th?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
That'd be fine with me also.
Okay. How about Michael Dawson and AECOM?
I'm gonna need to check my calendar.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good with us.
Okay. Well, I know just one of the action items we have right now is to get the meeting set up between Vision 13, FHWA, and Project Management Unit. And in Todd's email, he mentioned trying to get out at the next neighborhood association meeting, I think, and in advance of the walkthrough. And then they also have a staff member that said they would be willing to go door to door and knock and invite folks. So, Dwayne, if you have any feedback for Todd, you certainly can just reply to his email regarding that. I don't think we have any further updates at this point. Dwayne or Kofi, did you have anything else to discuss today?
No, not tonight.
Okay.
I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you all for calling, and hope you have a safe rest of the month.
Have a good evening.
Y'all take care.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Okay, thank you.